I'm Mia. I'm Kaya. I'm Luca.
And I'm Owen. We're here and we're start with the Santa Barbara Middle School Teen Press. And today we're here with the makers of the powerful documentary, Salt in My Soul. Thank you.
I'm Will. I'm the director and producer of the film. And I'll let Diane go.
I'm Diane. I'm Mallory's mom, and I was in the film and also the keeper of all of Mallory's material. So very personally, intimately connected to everything she wrote, plus her life.
Thank you.
Okay, our first question is for Diane. Salt in My Soul begins with the quote, "If nothing saves you from death, at least love should save you from life." How do you think this is highlighted in the film?
I think that because Mallory's life was consumed by so many medical issues, the most important thing for her were her relationships, love of her family, love of her friends, and love of her boyfriend. And while she couldn't escape the disease that she had, she could enhance her life with all the people and the love that she had in it.
Thank you. Okay, Diane, you were the only person Mallory gave her passwords to. How did it feel like to be the first one to read Mallory's journal and hear her recordings?
It was the greatest gift that she could have given me, and I still refer to it all the time. I think that it was an honor and a privilege and a trust that I earned during her 25 years. I think that she knew that no one would have her back more than I did.
Thank you.
Okay, this one's for you, Will. How did you first get involved in Salt in My Soul?
One of the other producers sent me the book at the end of 2019, and and he said he thought it would make a great documentary, and I read it and immediately agreed, and then got on the phone with Diane, and we started talking, because obviously she's, sort of the guardian of Mallory's memory. So she wanted to be very careful about who she entrusted that to. And for me, as the filmmaker, I wanted to know that there was enough material, out there. So, what's called archival material and B-roll and, all the family stuff and photos and everything. And I very quickly realized that there was a very exciting amount of material actually. And I slowly won Diane's trust, and we embarked on the film. It was actually one of the quickest sort of events for me professionally, from being interested in something to actually starting to make it, which was very lucky. So because we shot it just before the whole COVID thing struck, so we were lucky in that we pretty much finished filming, so we could concentrate on the editing during that time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, our next question is also for you, Will. What was it like? As someone who didn't know Mallory very personally, to work so closely with Mallory's friends and family producing the film?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was, I wanted to be very respectful, but at the same time, you're making a documentary, right? So you need to kind of, really discover what you're making the film about and get at the sort of, what you think the kind of, the truth at the middle of it is. The interviews were very, the people were very, very generous with me. They shared their feelings, and, and they were very moving too, because, all these people were grieving, right, for the loss of Mallory. And, and I was making them relive it and tell me these stories. So, I really wanted to be very delicate in that process, respectful of people's feelings, but at the same time, as you guys, have seen in the film, there are some sort of, some hard things that came up in Mallory's diary when people finally read it, about her, reluctance to share some of the hard mental health things she had gone through and some of her depression. At the same time as wanting to be very delicate with people in the interviews, I wanted to get that out too. So it was a balancing act. And then honestly, it sounds kind of, so kind of silly in a way, but what was amazing was I just kept coming back to this thought of, wow, Mallory really was a pretty exceptional person, and then I was like, God, I need to be careful that I don't just say, make a film and just say, this person was amazing, because that's ultimately not that interesting. You need the kind of character and everything. So, So it was a great privilege for me to get to know Mallory, and we were very lucky with a lot of the archival stuff that we found of her. And a very moving thing to be part of other people's grief, and I hope to as well kind of be part of that process with them as well and to help them.
Yeah, thank you.
It's clear that Mallory was loved by so many people. Diane, how did the cystic fibrosis community support Mallory in ways no one else could?
I think that the CF community understood each other and understand each other, because what we live with is unfathomable to somebody who hasn't gone through it. And one of the comments that I get over and over from people who write to me that I don't know and we never met, they say, thank you for a film that allows other people to see exactly what we struggle with. And I think that it's hard to just whine and say, this sucks, this is terrible, I have to have my chest pounded and I have to breathe and I have to take medications and I miss all kinds of things and I feel sick all the time and I struggle to breathe, and the list goes on and on and on. And so by having the film that Will created, which picks the life of what it's like, I think that helps people live with this disease or love someone with this disease. And so the film becomes a support tool for them to use with their external communities. In terms of how the CF community supported Mallory in her lifetime, I think because they couldn't be together through cross-infection, most of their relationships were online. And I think when you're in the hospital and there's someone in the next room who's struggling with the same issues you are, you have an instant bond. And I think that the CF community tends to be very tight-knit. And I still stay in touch with them. They have their own private chat rooms, and they have their own way of meeting up that allows them to be safe. And the irony is all the protocols that COVID imposes on people are the protocols that those with CF have lived with their whole lives.
And if I can just add one thing to that too, one of the things I was very struck by, as Diane was saying, is because the CF patients, they can't meet because of that problem of giving each other bugs, is, it's one of the few groups where you feel like, oh, like social media is a really valuable thing for them. You guys, I'm sure you hear about it all the time, of like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? But actually, I think you can see when people, are really communicating with each other and able to share things that they don't feel comfortable saying to others, that it can actually, that way of connecting can be really valuable, which I was really interested in discovering that about CF patients.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane, we know that you're still advocating we know you're still actively advocating for the CF community. How can we help the fight against cystic fibrosis?
You're helping it right now. You're helping it by publicizing the film and by asking good questions that will enable people to understand a little bit more, and by spreading the word. That's the single most important thing. I think that the film does two things, in addition to many, many others I won't go into. But the two things specifically it does is it raises money for the issues that we need to be addressing, which is antimicrobial resistance and phage therapy. And it raises awareness. And by watching the film, people support both. They support the knowledge that everybody should have to understand how difficult life is for these patients, and they support the fundraising that we're doing. So you're doing it, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, this is for you, Will. When producing Salt My Soul, what were some measures you took to make sure the film stayed focused on Mallory and her life?
Yes, I made the decision very early on that I wanted to try and have Mallory sort of function as the narrator of the film. Because when I realized how much audio there was, because she'd made podcasts, but then she'd also recorded herself, her thoughts, she did like rough drafts of podcasts. So there was so many hours of her voice. And then we started to find some of the footage of her, it became very clear that the more you were with Mallory, the stronger the film was, because it's really, it's her experience. And then also, the people, her loved ones, her family and friends, who we interviewed. But you're really the lessons and the kind of, all of that comes out of Mallory. So, as you always do with the film, you start with a big rough cut, which is really long. I think it was 3.5 hours the first time I showed it to Diane. And then
I had a heart attack. Yes, I remember that.
And I said, no, this always happens. Don't worry. We'll cut it down. We'll get it down. And then you just start chiseling away at it. And, and it honestly, it became wasn't easy, but, it became very clear that, the fat, as it were, from that cut was everything else and everybody else. And every time we tried to kind of go down a little path of trying to teach people about things or say something's terrible and the world should change like this, we thought, it just sort of distracted from her and her spirit and character. So that was really the primary focus for us in editing the film down, was staying with her.
Thank you.
Will, you had so much material to work with between Mallory's recordings and journal that was so personal. How did you decide what details to include and what not to include in the film?
Yes, it's a great question. There are still some things I miss, that we had to cut out, because in the end, you don't get to keep everything you want to keep. And there were so many amazing things. I think it was really about trying to sort of step back and think about the movie as a whole and, as an experience for people watching it. And I really wanted it to feel, for the documentary to feel less like a documentary and more like movie, right? And so I tried to concentrate on story and, and just sort of, through Mallory's voice and through the other interview subjects, really talk about what was happening and kind of let all of everyone's conclusions and feelings about that kind of come out of that and not impose those things on it, because if people are talking about how they feel about something, that's an opinion and that's fine. But for this, when it's a difficult subject, it's about who's doing, you've got a lot of people on screen who are grieving. So it felt like if we stick with the story, which is an amazing story, then, everything else will come from that. So that was the big theory. Then there is the moment where Diane made me cut one thing out of the film, which I still miss. So Diane is, if you read the film ever, you'll notice Diane does a lot of dancing, which is just one of my favorite things about Diane. Diane tried to get herself cut out of the film immediately. She was like, I shouldn't even this film. It should be just about Mallory. And I was saying, no, it's not. It's about, it's about the whole family and their experience. But Mallory secretly recorded her mum dancing in a hospital room once. And I think genuinely Diane didn't know she was being recorded. So she was going crazy, just doing this crazy dance. And that was my one compromise with Diane, where she was like, please don't put that in. So I was like, all right. I saw it.
It was mortifying.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wish had more film time? Like any part of film?
Yes, again, it's, as the filmmaker, I was quite happy with the 3.5 hour cut, right? Like, had that gone out, I'd have been thrilled, and the world would not have enjoyed the movie, because who wants to watch a 3.5 hour movie? But I don't know. I think in the end, I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think there's a lot more material on all of the subjects that we touch upon. But I think in the end we found a really nice rhythm, and so when I've rewatched it recently, with the release, I've always been pleased and never felt like we either spend too much time on something or too little time. I think, Diane, if I may answer for you too, I think Diane would have just said, just have the whole film be Mallory. Nobody else needs to be in it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but no, I'm really pleased with how it turned out, which isn't always the case when you make a film. It's a good question, because you sometimes do think, oh, I missed that section. But no, I think I managed to.
As good as it is, and it is good. I mean, it's amazing. There are things I miss too, previous cuts, and I always say, memory is strange, because I have a hard time remembering what's in the film, what's in the book, what was in the trailer, what was in her lived experience, what was in one of the earlier cuts that didn't make it, what's in her writing. It's all kind of a big blur right now. But I do think that Will did a magnificent job of taking a lifetime and whittling it down to 96 minutes, which is why I'm such a big proponent of the book and why I'm so happy that he made the decision at the end to leave the film with readings from Mallory's book, because at the end of the day, she wrote 300 pages that are pretty spectacular. And I do think she's the best part of the film. And I think, by virtue of the beast, all that could be in there was what's in there. And there's so much more to what she has to share. So I hope that you four at least will read the book if you have.
Yeah, I would love to read the book. Thank you. Okay, so this question is for the both of you. After knowing Mallory for Diane, and after making the film about her life for Will, in what way are you living life to the fullest?
Are we living life? What was the last word?
In what way are you living life to the fullest?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. It's a great question for me. I'll let Will go first.
What way am I? Honestly, I think it sounds again really kind of simple, but I think the big message for me is the kind of this idea of love and sharing and cherishing the people around you, the experiences you have every day, and letting people know that as well. I think we go through life and everything, so we're so busy all the time, that we don't always stop and let people know how much they mean to us, and how enjoyable things can be, right? Like just simply, there's the great story that Diane tells about, Mallory getting the Greek food, after she didn't get the first transplant. And, I think that to me is a great thing. Is like, oh yeah, like this is a really nice meal, and letting the person know who cooked it for you, because again, we're all kind of eating and running around like mad. And I know you guys are swamped with homework and, all of those kind of things, but just sort of really taking the time to appreciate the moment and to appreciate the people who are in that moment with you.
Thank you.
And for me, the way I would answer that is I leave every time I read the book, watch the film, or think about Mallory's life, and I finish that process, I think about the fact that we are so lucky to be alive. She says it. And so we don't know who has 25 years left, who has 50 years left, and who has a day left, because accidents happen, people get sick. And so the message I take away is carpe diem, seize the day. And in my case, Mallory left so much material and so many messages. So I'm on a mission to share everything that she shared and took the time to document. So between giving talks, working on the doc, doing this activity right now, I mean, this is a different activity for me, sitting with middle school students who have a film club. I've never done that before. I've done a lot of. My attitude is I say yes to everything. And I feel like every opportunity to speak to people is a chance to convey the messages that Mallory stood for and wrote about. And that's why I feel like I'm living differently now. I also find that if there's ever anything I don't want to do, all I do is I think about Mallory and how she had to live a life of daily activities she didn't want to do: treatment, pills, extra sleep, eating more, missing activities. And I think we have to realize how lucky we are. So if I ever feel like I wake up in the morning and I don't want to go for that run or take my Pilates class, I just say, buck up, think of Mallory and get it done. And I do, and it's changed me. So I do feel like I live life very fully and with her in my mind every step of the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm one of their teachers. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So what's the plan now? Will they write something based on this interview?
So we will have a recording of this interview that we have. I believe David sent you our website. Is that right? Has he sent it to you? So we'll put the recording up. The film was so inspiring to all of us. One of our mottos here at middle school is carpe diem. And so it definitely struck home and was inspiring to all of us to see the way that Mallory lived her life and how you all have taken that.
So when one of the students asked what they can do to help, what would be helpful to us if you could screen the film for the whole school? I dream big, think big, and I would love for everybody to see it, because I do think there's messages for everybody.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yes, we can.
I feel like Mallory worked hard to write a great book. Everybody should read it, and Will worked hard to make a great film, and everybody should see it.
Absolutely. We'll get both.
Okay.
We'll make sure we have both. Thank you both so much
Thank
again for
Thank
your
you.
time, and
Thank you.
we'll
Amazing group of kids, and this was one of my favorite things that I've done in publicizing the film, and we've done a lot of big things. So thank you.
well, that's wonderful. That means
I
The
have
other
a
thing
middle
is I
school.
have-
I have
They're-
a schooler
they're
as
all
well.
still here.
So okay, great. Well,
Thank
I
you
also
so
have to
much.
say they asked really good questions. We've done some interviews with professional press people who have not been as prepared and didn't do as much thinking in advance. So kudos to the kids. That's what I say.
Round of applause to all of you.
Thank you.
They're all
Thank you
here.
so much. You're so inspiring. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.